and welcome. I'm Gray Barnard, and I am joined by a psychotherapist and playwright, Tom Franco. We're involved in a project, a new play by Tom called My Alexandra, and it follows the journey not only of a patient named Alexandra, but the journey of her psychotherapist and father. The latter two of those is with us right now. So let's jump in to the play itself. This is something that was born out of your work as a psychotherapist or your experience as a father?
I would say both, because my daughter is diagnosed with bipolar disorder. I don't hide that. And there are aspects of Alexandra that I think you could parallel my daughter, but also could parallel any other young woman who has bipolar disorder. So I would say she's more of a composite of her and maybe others that I have worked with, because I specialize in treating patients that have bipolar disorder. So I speak to many of them.
Was there a single event that made you feel, I have to tell this story?
I don't know. I think that's a very hard question for me to answer. I don't necessarily feel that there was one particular thing, other than the fact that in my graduate studies, I'm a big proponent of wanting to make change happen and have people be aware of an area where there's a problem, and mental illness and the stigma that surrounds it is a huge problem. And so I wanted to create something maybe that will create a voice and communicate to the masses change in this area that needs to happen.
So it's entertaining, of course, but it's also meant to educate and maybe even reform.
Yes.
Is that part of your mission here, is to inform an audience, but also to make changes, or at least to inspire discussion about changes in psychotherapy and the treatment of bipolar disorder?
Not just bipolar disorder, but any sort of mental illness or mental health issue. People are it's changed a little bit, I think, with the younger demographic. Most of my demographic that I work with are very young. They're 20s to maybe late 30s to 40s. And younger people are very open to going to therapy and wanting to really work on themselves. So we're changing, I think, as far as how we're talking and speaking about wellness, about self-care, about mental illness. So I think the timeliness of me writing My Alexandra, also maybe I want to try to capitalize on what's already starting to happen, which I do think is some positive change in the area of mental health and mental illness. However, it's so misunderstood and really not fully accepted, because there's a lot of stigma that surrounds mental health. And so people are very guarded about talking about it. So there's certain things that we just, as a society, don't talk about for fears or whatever, that I think should be talked about. Because if we talk about it, it sort of destigmatizes the area to have a more open dialogue that maybe will bring about positive change.
And what better way to humanize it than to put it into a human, an actor on stage, and show her struggles, show her journey.
Yes.
And part of her journey is also your journey, isn't it? This is a story about Alexandra, but also her father and psychotherapist. How much of that is autobiographical?
So the character, Dr. Lawrence, who I've given birth to, who's a psychologist. I am not a psychologist. Dr. Lawrence is a psychologist. And so I've made him into this, I hope, interesting character. Does Dr. Lawrence have aspects of me? I don't know how he couldn't. I don't know how any writer writes anything if there isn't some sort of personal connection to the character. So to answer that, I would say I have a very personal connection to Dr. Lawrence, but it's not me per se, if that makes sense.
It does, and we're going to explore that in our next segment about the characters themselves, who we meet in the play, how the play progresses, without giving away too much. No spoilers here. But Tom Franco, we're looking forward to continuing to talk. So stay tuned. There's a lot more to come with Tom Franco and My Alexandra.